Should Prince Harry stop fighting the British press? The number is 027 862 2222. That's the number you need. Now, the Duke of Sussex has arrived at the High Court for another legal battle against the newspaper. That's the publisher that owns the Daily Mail. And this trial, starting today, reportedly costing £40 million, is against the publishers of the Daily Mail. Harry and other high-profile figures, including Sir Elton John, my friend Elizabeth Hurley as well, have accused associated newspapers of unlawful information, obtaining it unlawfully, gathered between 1983 and 2011. They allege, 1993 and 2011. This, they say, comes from phone hacking, bugging cars and homes, and obtaining information such as medical records, bank statements via illicit means. Associated Newspapers denies the accusations, calling them preposterous smears. Harry is expected to give evidence on Thursday, something he's done previously when battling the press. Now, we don't know, Matt, at this point, the precise substance of the allegations, but just to give you a bit of a legal primer, the publishers for the Mail went to court and said, look, chuck this case out. And the judge refused to. So there is clearly sufficient substance for the judge to decide at trial. By substance, I mean evidence, that some pretty bad shenanigans went on. And we can't speculate without hearing the evidence. But in a nutshell, just to repeat what we are aware, the claim is that various things went on, including hiring private investigators to get confidential, personal and deeply upsetting information. Now, if that's right, hasn't Prince Harry got a point? And isn't he doing something some would argue is rather heroic?
So certainly wouldn't want to prejudge the trial, let alone the outcome of the trial. But of course, Prince Harry has every right to take on British newspapers. When he did so the first time, or when he, for the first time, took the stand in the witness box, that was itself the first time a British royal had appeared in a witness box for 130 years. And I think good for him, brave for him. Even if you are a royal, that is a very difficult thing to do, to take on the British media or elements of the British media. Yeah. But he has just as much right to do so as you, Lynn, me, or anyone watching today.
Yeah, just to be clear, I mean, what is being alleged is that corrupt police officers were paid, black medical records, and even celebrity homes are bugged. Now, I understand people are not doing fun runs for the privileged, and people worry perhaps not very much about people with lots of money and position, etc. But the limitless violence it does to be bugged in your home, and it might start with the privileged and celebrities and so on and so forth, but it doesn't end there. And you know, these might have been things that have changed over the years, but nevertheless, if he's right, why shouldn't he continue the claims that he's brought against other newspapers? Let's just have a look at Harry's previous cases. The first was the Daily Mirror. Let's just have a look at it. In December 2023, Harry's phone hacking case against the publishers of the Mirror was proved in part, with 15 out of 33 highlighted articles found to be the product of phone hacking or unlawful information gathering. A judge ruled Harry's phone had been hacked to a modest extent between 2003 and 2009, and he received £140,600 in damages, and a settlement was later reached over the remainder of the claim. I suspect a lot of that went to legal fees. Then, in January, I think this was January last year, so make sure you can see it, Harry settled out of court. This was on the eve of the actual trial with News Group newspapers, publishers of The Sun and the now defunct News of the World. NGM apologised for serious intrusion by The Sun between 1996 and 2011 and unlawful activities by private investigators. They also apologised for phone hacking, surveillance and misuse of private information by journalists and private investigators at the News of the World. Now, Harry is reported to have received about £10 million for that. Again, a lot of that doesn't necessarily go to Harry. Some of that will be eaten up in lawyers' fees. Obviously, I know that personally. Before we come back to the panel, Gertrude, you're in London. Look, he's taken on the Mirror and the Sun. Why shouldn't he hold the Mail to account if the case is proven?
Yeah, it depends on, sometimes it's so old, so they haven't got the proof. But there's a lot who is supporting him, and it's just really that Elton John is not, why is he not stopping? But Hugh Grant said Harry's the only one who can do it, because that you would know if when it's a civil case, even though you are right, if you are awarded less than what the paper said, you would have to pay the paper's fee.
Right.
And as Hugh Grant said, I haven't got 10 million, but Harry is very determined. And what even more, it hasn't stopped.
Yeah, I hear you. Thanks, Gertrude. It's interesting to hear you. I think what you're ostensibly saying, what you're basically saying, is that ultimately there's a principle here, and it's one that he should fight for. Privacy doesn't just affect him and his privilege, but other people too. I'm going to go very quickly to you, Andrew, before going back to Lynn. What do you reckon? Should he just sort of give up and stay in Montecito and, as some people want, not to complain?
Have we learned nothing from the death of his mother? Have we learned nothing from what this paper has done in general to divide this country? Harry should continue fighting. It's his right. The way they hounded Meghan out of this country is a shame on this country, because she should have done a lot of good, especially in a time like this. So here we are again with the Daily Mail, who for years to me have been, from the 30s onwards, have a very dark past. We won't go into that, but go and read up about it. They're proprietors. And now they sow the division in this country, which we do not need at this time.
Right. Well, it's not the job of people to take people to court for, papers to court for sowing division. They present a worldview, one that you know about or not. The question is, if they've invaded people's privacy and acted unlawfully, should they be held to account? And should somebody like Harry continue to with that fight, which I think you agree with? Last point to you, Janice, over in Essex.
Hi, guys. Lovely to talk to you again. I do think he's well within his rights to do this. Us average Joe probably wouldn't have the money to fight this.
Right.
But he's doing something, and what these people have gone through is horrendous. It's like being spied on. I mean, you'd never want that, would you?
No, I think...
I don't like him suing us for security.
Yeah, that's a different case altogether. Yeah. But you say on this one, there's a principal position, and it's one that he's right to defend. Lynn, one of the reasons that this is kind of in the news is that there is, albeit a slight thawing, I can note, towards Harry. He seems to be coming back, maybe rebuilding his relationship with the King. It certainly looks like the King might be present at the Invictus Games. But, bringing it back to this, is that there's perhaps a distaste for using the courts to resolve things. And more importantly, when you're a royal, one of the things you're supposed to do is never complain and never explain. And I wonder whether that's right here or not.
I think Harry is representative of the new gen royals, if you want to call it that, it is his prerogative, as long as it's not using a penny of our taxpayers' money, then he's well within his rights to do so. But you cannot, yes, if something has been breached in terms of the law, something unlawful has been done, then take them to task. But you cannot curate how you want to be perceived in the press if you are a royal or a famous person, a public individual. And, he's married to someone who likes fame, who likes attention, who likes the press. And I just think sometimes it does come across as a bit of a, contradiction of we want to be shown in the press, but just how we like it. Like I said, yes, go after them if they're breaking the law. But this whole we want privacy, but we don't want privacy, but we want privacy.
Sorry,
you can't. No, hang on, I'm finished. You can't do that.
Matt, in on this one, because you. What's your view here? I mean, as far as you're concerned, why? Some people might say when you're in the public eye and you're a celebrity, you have that much privacy.
They're asking the question again. The question tabloids always reach for when accountability starts to feel threatening. Should Prince Harry just stop fighting the press? Should he step back, stay quiet, stay overseas and accept whatever is written about him? Should he give up? Not because he's wrong, not because the law is against him, but because his refusal to move on is inconvenient for an industry that would rather no one ever look too closely at how it operates. What you saw on Jeremy Vine wasn't just a discussion about a single court case or one man's grievance. It was a live demonstration of how tabloid logic begins to crack when it's forced out of headlines and into open conversation. It was about power, consequence, and why Harry's refusal to back down has unsettled the British press for years. Today, we're slowing it all the way down for the squaddies, calmly and clearly, so you can see exactly why this fight is legitimate, necessary, and far bigger than one prince. Let's begin with the part tabloids desperately want blurred, because confusion is their greatest shield. This case is not about Prince Harry being upset by criticism, offended by headlines, or uncomfortable with public scrutiny. It is about allegations of unlawful behaviour by the publisher of the Daily Mail, allegations serious enough that a judge examined them and explicitly refused to dismiss the case. That alone matters more than any opinion aired on a TV panel, because courts do not allow cases to proceed on vibes, feelings, or celebrity sulking. The claims being examined are specific, detailed, and legally grounded. They include phone hacking, the bugging of homes and vehicles, the use of private investigators to obtain medical records, bank details, and highly personal information, allegedly carried out over an extended period of time. These are not tabloid exaggerations designed for clicks. They are allegations that have crossed a judicial threshold. Once you understand that, the entire framing of Harry as dramatic or obsessive collapses, because this is not a media spat, it is a legal reckoning. One of the most revealing moments on Jeremy Vine came when contributors were forced to acknowledge something the tabloids hate, conceding out loud. Prince Harry has already won cases against the press. Not rhetorical victories, not moral ones, but legal judgments. Courts found unlawful information gathering at the Mirror. Newsgroup newspapers issued formal apologies for serious intrusions into his life. Settlements were paid. The pattern is no longer theoretical, it is established. So when the question is asked over and over again, why doesn't he just stop? The real answer becomes uncomfortable for the media. Why should he stop when wrongdoing has been proven? Why should he walk away when laws were broken and privacy was violated? The demand for silence is not rooted in fairness or fatigue. It's rooted in the desire to close the book before accountability finishes its work. Harry's consistency is not obsession. It is what accountability looks like when someone refuses to be worn down. The panel touched on privilege, and on the surface it sounds reasonable. Yes, Prince Harry is privileged. Yes, he has access to resources that most people do not. But this argument falls apart the moment you follow it through honestly. Because if powerful newspapers were willing to illegally surveil princes, celebrities, and high-profile figures, people with visibility and influence, they were certainly willing to do it to ordinary people who lacked the money, the lawyers, and the platform to fight back. As one caller correctly pointed out, unlawful surveillance doesn't end with the famous. It starts there because it's lucrative and protected by public interest excuses, but it extends outward quietly into the lives of people who never make headlines. That is precisely why these cases matter. Harry using his position to push them forward is not an abuse of privilege. It is the clearest way to expose a system that relied on silence, fear, and imbalance to operate unchecked. Again and again, the idea surfaced that Harry, as a royal, should simply endure media treatment under the old mantra of never complain, never explain. But let's be honest about what that phrase has become in modern media culture. It is no longer a dignified principle. It is a convenient shield used by tabloids to avoid scrutiny, accountability, and consequences. By stepping into a courtroom instead of issuing statements, by testifying under oath rather than leaking to friendly reporters, Harry does something deeply threatening to the tabloid model. He removes their ability to control the narrative unchallenged. He replaces anonymous briefings with evidence. That is why the press frames this as betrayal or weakness. In reality, it is the most direct form of accountability they have faced in decades. No discussion of Harry ever seems to stay focused for long before drifting toward Meghan, and Jeremy Vine was no exception. The familiar suggestions surfaced that she enjoys attention, that she likes fame, that visibility somehow cancels the right to privacy. This is one of the oldest tabloid tricks, and it only works if people fail to interrogate it. Wanting a career, engaging in public work, appearing in fashion or media, or speaking about causes does not mean consenting to illegal surveillance. These things are not opposites, no matter how often tabloids pretend they are. Every public figure manages their image while also expecting the law to protect their private life. The idea that Harry and Meghan must forfeit those protections simply because they exist in public is not a legal argument. It's a punishment masquerading as logic. One contributor suggested that by pursuing these cases, Harry is trying to control how he is perceived. But that claim collapses almost immediately when you look at reality. Taking on Britain's most powerful media organisations guarantees worse coverage, not better. It invites mockery, hostility and relentless attacks, which is exactly what Harry has endured for years. If this were about image management, silence would be the smarter choice. Compliance would be easier. Playing along would preserve comfort. Litigation is the hardest, most draining route possible, financially, emotionally, and reputationally. The fact that Harry chose it tells you everything you need to know about his motivations. One of the most honest moments on the show came when a caller asked a simple question that still hangs over every discussion of Harry and the press. Have we learned nothing from the death of his mother? Princess Diana was relentlessly pursued, intruded upon, and commodified by tabloids that later expressed regret without accountability. Harry has been explicit that he refuses to let history repeat itself. When he goes to court, he is not reopening wounds for attention. He is confronting the same system, using the only tools available to him now, because silence did not protect his mother, and he will not pretend it ever did. Once you strip away the personalities, the opinions, and the noise, this case resolves into a single question that even Jeremy Vine's panel eventually had to confront. Should powerful media organisations be held accountable when they break the law? Once framed that way, the resistance becomes telling. This is not about Montecito. It is not about fame, boredom, or grievance. It is about whether privacy law has meaning when violated by institutions with enormous reach and influence. If the answer is no, then the law is performative. If the answer is yes, then cases like Harry's are not a nuisance, they are necessary. What you saw on Jeremy Vine was not a man overreaching. It was a system being pushed reluctantly into acknowledging that Prince Harry has a point. Even amid scepticism and mixed opinions, the truth kept surfacing. Unlawful acts deserve consequences, no matter who commits them, and no matter how loud their megaphone is. Harry fighting the press is not reckless, petty, or contradictory. It is principled, grounded in law, and rooted in lived experience. And it is precisely because he refuses to trade justice for comfort that tabloids keep urging him to stop. Clock that, and everything else starts to make sense.